The fifth and final season of Star Trek Lower Decks is now airing on Paramount Plus. And you know what? I got to talk about that. First, I do want to say, I hope we get a something follow-up with these characters because I just love Lower Decks. But let's actually talk about Season 5, Episode 1, Dos Cerritos. And I gotta say, I love the description. It's, quote, a spatial anomaly forces the Cerritos crew to face their own faces, period. Tendi pirates, period, unquote. I just love how describing Tendi thought they just go with Tendi pirates of all things. Why? They could have actually described the plot, which by the way was pretty good as well. Actually, it was really good. A really good opener. Got us introduced to our characters, or I should say reintroduced, and Dos Cerritos. They face a parallel universe. Thankfully, it's not the mirror universe, though definitely that could be a somewhat mirror Mariner, definitely, but we did find out why she has a different last name than her mother, because she goes by her middle name instead for her last name. Again, distancing herself, but let's actually address, so they're closing an interspatial rift and that, but they get sucked in and they meet their counterparts. Well, Mariner, or I should say, Becky Freeman, as she calls herself, is the captain, but she, of course, rules with an iron fist. And that's sort of revealed across the episode, but things are shown where people are instantly snapping to attention when she walks by, kind of deal. And our Mariner is like, okay, and figures it out and all that. And this is, she's confronting another aspect of herself. Because before, trying to just be insubordinate and all that. But now she's getting faced with responsibility, leadership, and, she's afraid of it. She kind of wants to be her normal self. And then she's confronted with a version of her who decides to embrace leadership in the most unhealthy way possible. And then, of course, each character has different things to, Boimler's counterpart, he has a beard like Riker and is way more successful, but gives Boimler some pretty good advice. Namely, just be confident, be sure of yourself, kind of, which is pretty good advice. Rutherford sees basically, if he in his missing of Tendi, just focus on and his work could become with him, basically a full-on cyborg with no memories, but his counterpart does also decide not to delete the memories he has of our Rutherford. And of course, Tendi's not on the other Cerritos because she's doing pirate stuff, just like she's doing right now. But we'll talk about that after I finish talking about the Cerritos plot line. And yeah, just there's several things, like there's a scene where the two Tianas are hissing at each other, just being total cats. You have basically the only difference I think between the two Shaxs is one has longer hair. And some of the other characters, like, what's the difference between the two Ransoms? I can't think of anything, but just minor stuff. And of course, there's also the differences between the two Billups. Apparently, this other universe Billups decided that he would become the king of his planet, but still stay in Starfleet. Go figure. But that plot ends, they do a technobabble solution, and now Cerritos goes home, but, they'll Mariner, so, decides that she doesn't want to be kept anymore, wants to go back to being, a lovable and subordinate. So she switches places with our Mariner and transports over, but it's clear that she forgot how to act as herself. Or, maybe in all that. It's been a while. And, of course, everyone's picking up things pretty quickly. Our Mariner gets out of her restraints, and the other Cerritos crew is like, picks up that she's acting weird. And they figure out, yep, you're the other Mariner, aren't you? Oh. And then, of course, the other Mariner is picked up on, she tries to prevent communication and all that, but what pretty much finally gives her away is when she calls Captain Freeman mother, because our Mariner, never does that. And then they hear, and our Mariner is like, it's me, Ma, I can prove it, and it goes on, and Freeman's like, yeah, we already figured it out. But that's also when Freeman figures out what happened to her other version. Somehow her other version got sent to Starbase 80. And apparently it's still a mess and not a great place in that universe as well. But why? And then the episode ends, and Ransom's just consoling her at the Cerritos bar while she's drinking. Probably since all, but still it's a great scene. I also didn't mention too much about the other Chilin. The only difference is that our Chilin says interesting and the other Chilin says remarkable. But our Chilin at the very end says remarkable as a joke. She's so unstable for a Vulcan, but she fits right on in with Starfleet. And of course, Milner also has been assigned to mentor some ensigns now. And she's nervous, but now she knows what she doesn't want to be, and she decides to try to be the leader, the mentor that she always wished she had. So pretty some good stuff. And now we need to talk about Tendi's story. Well, she's doing Orion pirating stuff, doesn't want to kill and all that, and her crew apparently does want to do that stuff, be traditional Orion pirates. But anyhow, Tendi convinces her sister to give her a task that will pay off the debt, and to retrieve an old Orion cruiser from the time that they call the Great Plague, or something along those lines. Anyhow, they find it, but they're confronted by blue Orions, or as they call themselves, Orions, which is a deep cut to the animated series, which is just great fun thing going on there. And of course they call our Orions, as green Orions, green Orions. It's just hilarious. But anyhow, they fight over the ship, but Tendi heals one of them after he is stabbed, and of course they were described also as patriotic, the bluer ones, which is just hilarious, but it kind of makes sense in a way. But the thing is, she heals and her crew gets mad at her for healing him and all that, but she convinces them not to, and turns out they actually all married her because they thought she was badass enough that she was allowed to do what she actually wanted to do to pursue her passions. And really, she just did it anyhow, and she told them as much. So they actually stumble across the ship's medical bay, and it turns out that old Orion cruiser is actually an old Orion medical ship. And of course, they ask her, Orions had medical ships? And Tendi does say in the old days, yes. Which does nicely connect back up to the previous season's episode, Those Old Scientists, where we see an Orion science ship. Actually, that's not Lodex episode, it's a Strange New Worlds episode, but it's a crossover episode. And this Tendi's grandmother is described as a scientist on that ship, and turns out she is on that ship. And that sounds like when that episode is occurring, the Orions, the stereotype of pirates, have begun to take over. And so, seems like Orions have become pirates in the same way Klingons have become warriors. Or actually, it's all cultural devolution, degradation, whatever term you want to use. But anyhow, they use laughing gas that were in the ship's tanks in order to subdue. But apparently, their masks are not quite impervious to laughing gas. But they get the ship. But the blue Orions declare war on the green Orions, as they would say, because they use unpirate-like tactics. And of course, Tendi defends herself I just used Orion technology, and she did. She did. And while her dad's paid, she decided, she got them into the mess, she'll help them get out. So hopefully, though, she gets back on the Cerritos pretty soon, because I want to see the whole crew together once again. But that's the plot summary, and I really loved it. Like I said, there's a lot of great stuff. Tendi really, actually finding some Orions she can relate to who, like her, don't want to be traditional pirates, have their own other interests. One wants to be a dancer. One wants to be an ethics teacher on Orion. That might be a bit of a hard stretch. And what did the other one want to be? Why can't I remember? Regardless, they all wanted to do something other than be pirates, just like Tendi, and that's why they married her. And while Tendi doesn't have much of an arc per se, character-wise, she's pretty sure of her character, but she does do something that causes a greater problem for all of Orion society, and she decides that it's her duty to basically fix her mistake. Maybe she'll somehow come to a peace treaty between the two different color Orions. The green matriarchal Orions and the blue patriarchal Orions. I wonder if they're going to be doing some interesting commentary on power structures with that in later episodes. Just a theory. And then, of course, Boimler, he doesn't go through much of a character arc in this episode because he's already gained a lot of confidence in that. But the fact that he wasn't on Starfleet's 30 under 30 list, but Naomi made it, though Naomi does seem to be a very gifted child. Though, I don't know if by the timeline she's older than 10 or not, or younger than 10. But she's probably around that because Boimler says that she's like 10. But that's kind of a sidetrack. But Boimler's arc really is, learning that sometimes there'll be missteps, but just be confident in yourself. Just some good advice for him. And then, of course, Rutherford basically needed to learn that with Tendi not being there, he didn't need to think everything into his work in order to distract himself from his pain and sadness. He has his other friends too. He has people he can support to, he can talk to. Milner definitely needed to learn that she could be a leader. And granted, she saw a bad example of herself being a leader, but she hopefully, and I think she will, take from that she can be a leader. She just needs to be the leader she wants to be and wants to see, which I think could be really good for us. And Gillian, again, doesn't have a major character arc, but I have a feeling we might get something sooner. Her major character arc was deciding that, she didn't have to go back to serving on a Vulcan ship. But yeah, like I said, every character gives some kind of arc, some much more impactful. I think Rutherford and Milner have the strongest character arcs as they learn a very important character lesson for themselves, while Boimler is just reinforcing lessons from previous episodes. And with Tendi, honestly, Tendi is the kind of gal who, she'll try to fix her mistakes. There was an entire episode where her plot was she accidentally interrupted another officer's attempt to ascend and all that, and she spent the entire episode trying to help him, trying him not to be mad at him. So very much fits in her character that she try to fix her mistake, even though I don't think it was a mistake. And she'll probably somehow manage to negotiate a peace treaty. I'm just throwing that out there. But that's what I got to say. I want to hear your thoughts. What did you think of the first episode of Star Trek Lower Deck Season 5, Dos Cerritos? I'd love to hear your opinions because I enjoyed it, and I shared mine, and I would love to hear yours. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Of course, when Season 5 of Star Trek Lower Decks dropped, it wasn't just Episode 1 dropping on the 24th, they also dropped Episode 2, Shades of Green, and that's what I'm going to be reviewing today. So, first, let's just address basically the little description on Paramount Plus. Quote, Tendi races to stop a conflict while Boimler and Milner race to stop capitalists. Unquote. And I just like how they just went out and said capitalists. And honestly, Star Trek has really been really clarifying that they are a post-scarcity and socialist economic society, that they don't revolve around capitalism. They've been doing that a lot more lately, really stressing that as how the Federation operates. And people say Star Trek isn't political. Some of this stuff dates back to Gene Roddenberry, though I think they're doing a little better than he did. I'm just saying. But let's actually discuss the episode. So, kind of like how Dos Cerritos, the first episode, was really focusing probably the greater part of the plot on what the Cerritos was going through. Here, well, yes, the Cerritos plot is really important and all that. The heart of the story is Tendi's story. So that's where I'm going to begin. So basically they're fighting a pirate war with the Blue Orions, which apparently are technically a part of Orion society, as they all do answer to the Pirate Queen or whatever. But anyhow, so Tendi and her sister are having a strategy session, but it's also clearly they're just, being sisters, messing around, eating snacks and all that. Like, you can tell those sisters. And probably really good for them. They probably haven't had a chance to truly be sisters in quite some time. And this gave them an opportunity. So, it's kind of crazy how, the pirate war is like, yep, just two factions of pirates. So, apparently the Blue Orions, yeah, they're not a really wealthy or well-off faction. But apparently the Pirate Queen doesn't want them fighting anymore, so forces them to do a race that has not been done in centuries to resolve the dispute. But also doing this Tendi's sister, which by the way, their last name their family name both is Tendi, so I should probably be calling Tendi Dawnn to make sure I don't confuse them all. But anyhow, her sister was acting a little bit strange, so, Tendi Dawnn, she wants to figure out what's going on. And, yeah, her sister probably should have known better. once Tendi has the mind to figure out something, she'll figure it out. Remember, she once tracked down an unidentified patient in the ship's medical database to give the annual physical, and it turned out that patient was the doctor, and she went and broke her own arm to get the opportunity. So, yeah. Tendi figures it out. It was actually quite simple. She just read her sister's logs, and it turns out her sister is pregnant. And so now Tendi's like, basically getting into overprotective sister mode, wanting to make sure her sister's all fine, doesn't get hurt and all that. Turns out Tendi, Divana, she's the only one who didn't know, because apparently according to Orion custom, since Divana's the current mistress of the Winter Constellation, she'd have to stay on Orion for 14 years to train her niece to be the next mistress of the Winter Constellation. So, what they ended up doing, hiding the truth from her. So that way she could go back to Starfleet, which really does show that her family does care about what she actually wants. And of course, things don't go well in the race. The Blue Orions, they cheat, and then Tendi thinking, let's just make it tie that way, we all get to keep our wealth. Yeah, the Pike Queen did not like that, and basically declared both houses lose everything. But thankfully, because of what's going on with Cerritos, Tendi's family is not totally, out of their pirate wealth, for that better term. So let's actually talk about what Mariner and Boimler are doing. They're leading an away mission on the planet that has recently joined the Federation, and they're getting rid of all their money. Just destroying it and all that. Having parties in the streets and all that. It's basically a celebration, and Boimler's trying to, be, the fun boss, so, he gives his away team an hour break, which, that's actually a good thing, good for morale and all that. Turns out they get captured by a bunch of capitalists who do not want to give up the wealth. Bunch of wealthy, rich socialites, robber barons, as Boimler actually calls them at the end of the episode. But thankfully, because of all his points, he gave them a name, based off his name. But thanks to that, they actually were able to basically make it look like they died, but they did survive. But yeah, turns out I think Boimler and Mariner will be quite a good leader. So Mariner actually talks Boimler into being a little looser because she was tired of being responsible. But this is kind of an adjustment for them, learning to be leaders, and yeah, and I think they did a pretty good job. And Boimler's leadership actually helped his team. Yes, he gives them a little independence, a little relaxation, which is good. But also, he gives them points, and that allowed them to basically fool their captors who were not at all equipped to, be captors. Yeah, who knows how that's going to go. And then, of course, also on the Cerritos, T'Lyn has noticed that Boimler has not been socializing and all that. He still misses Tendi. And so, basically, she concocts a scheme to trick him into socializing by repairing the shuttle that's in the bay that Rutherford and Tendi have been working on. T'Lyn eventually, once she repairs it, Rutherford admits why, he was delaying the repairs. And so overnight, what does T'Lyn do? She destroys the shuttle so that way when Tendi gets back, Tendi and Rutherford can work on the shuttle together. And then, of course, Tendi does get back. Of course, she rejoins the Cerritos crew. We knew it was going to happen eventually. And she walks, and then, she's there ready to begin repairing the shuttle again, spending time with Rutherford. And Rutherford's like, okay, how is panicking? The shuttle's been repaired. How is he going to break the news to Tendi? That's when they discover that T'Lyn broke the shuttle down even more, so it has to be rebuilt even more. And what does Tendi do? She's like, yes, we can all do it together, which is just such a Tendi response. And then, because of hearing about the planet that they want, Tendi gets an idea, so Star Trek contracts Tendi's family to be the official disposal of all the wealth on that planet. So they get their fortune back in a roundabout way. But the Blue Orions are now apparently working for Tendi's family. And they're just bumbling idiots. But I was kind of like, we're winning for everyone involved. Though, definitely I don't think the Orions as a whole are joining the Federation anytime soon. But yeah, pretty good, fun episode. I really love it. Like I said, this was a big story arc. I think more for Tendi more than anyone else. She's not cut out to be a pirate. She's not. That's not where her heart follows. And also shows that her family does truly care about her wishes. The fact that they were willing to keep Davana's sister's pregnancy a secret, so that way she wouldn't feel obliged to stay on Orion to fulfill her cultural duties as the current Mistress of the Winter Constellation to train the next Mistress of the Winter Constellation. So, that is kind of a nice little thing there, showing that her family does truly support and care for her, even acknowledging that money isn't everything. So definitely, they probably like having it more than that. Again, Tendi's definitely the non-capitalist in her family more than anything. But what else is there to say? Mariner and Boimler both get, to express some of their concerns about leadership, but show that they're actually pretty good leaders. So it's really seeing Mariner trying to be the responsible one and Boimler trying to be more the fun one. But then again, they both do pretty well. Mariner does great in unpredictable situations, and Boimler, he is actually a really good planner when he's not overthinking it. And it turns out, I think, by having people that he's responsible for, he's not overthinking as much. And then Rutherford admits more that he misses Tendi. And when they reunite and all that, it's just such a sweet thing there. I ship them. And then, of course, Talin even has her character arc, too. She recognizes that Rutherford wasn't socializing, so was trying to trick him into socializing, but also then realized, that his connection with Tendi and working on the show together meant something special to them, and that she shouldn't have taken that away from them when Tendi does return. She's Vulcan, so she's probably seeing it in a very logical fashion. Well, according to Vulcans, she's highly emotional, but she's still a Vulcan by human standards. But yeah, like I said, good fun episode. It was good seeing a little character development for Talinchu as she, better understands human emotion and all that. Okay, and Orion emotion as well. Also, too, I kind of want to know more about, how Orion society works, because while they're definitely a matriarchal society, there's at least one Orion family that is dominated, the Blue Orions of all people, or are they just they're non-Orions who are members of the Orion Syndicate? Who knows what's going on with them? But it is some interesting questions there. But I also have to wonder too, because we've seen, two different shades of green for Orions. I wonder if the lighter shade, like Tendi, are the ones that don't have the female hormones, or pheromones, I should say, while the ones with the darker skin do. It's just wondering, something I wish we could learn more about, because the fact that maybe not all Orions, have pheromones is a really interesting part of the society that I really want to learn more about. But that wasn't even brought up in this episode. It's just something I had on the back of my head. And something else I want to mention, since I did mention it in my review for the last episode, the title sequence. It's getting even more crazy with that battle. There's Borg, Romulans, Pakleds, the crystalline entity, the world probe is there. What else is there now? Those were there all before. Vidra's there now. The green hand of Apollo from the original series is there, and who knows? Oh, and the Solians are there. That seems just getting crazier and crazier. But it also makes it funner and funner. But anyhow, that's where I'm going to end my review. I would love to hear your thoughts on episode 2 of season 5, Shades of Green. Let me know in the comment section down below. So the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Deck Season 5 recently dropped, the episode being episode 3, The Best Exotic Nanite Hotel. So I'm going to be reviewing it, talking what I think of it and all of that. So let's just first off address the description of it on Paramount Plus. The Lower Deckers hunt nanites on a resort in space. I just love how they just added that in space thing. Like, it's Star Trek, we already know it's all in space, but it's basically a moon-sized resort that's artificial. It's a space station that happens to be a resort. Not too much about it, but there's 2 plots going on. Actually, more 3 plots, but 2 of them are intertwined. So let's talk about Boimler's plot first. He, along with Ransom and Billups, go on an undercover mission to try to find an admiral who has gone AWOL. And right before that, Jet comes in, missing his hands, because he was just on a mission with Billups and Ransom, where he lost his hands. No. And it's basically he's convinced that they throw him and other people lower down into dangerous situations to make sure it's safe. This gets Boimler paranoid, so he keeps on making a bunch of stupid mistakes. While the real reason why Boimler was brought along was actually because he's a clever planner. He thinks things through. He thinks ahead. He can get out of almost any scrape. And that's why they really brought him along. But, the ending does show that and all that. And the Admiral, well, he's given a task because he went AWO because he's tired of milking space whales of all things. Why Starfleet needs that done, I don't know, but apparently that's the thing. But Boimler comes up with a solution that also makes the Admiral happy too. Gives him something to do, which connects up to the main plot. And that main plot is Tallinn, Tendi, Rutherford, Milner, and Jennifer the Andorian are sent on a mission to capture some nanites. And yeah, so let's just jump to what is going on. Jennifer is acting like she and Milner never broke up. And so Milner is confused because she thought it was clear, even though she never actually said it. She was trying to avoid an emotional conversation. But it turns out that Milner was just being messed with by Jennifer. Jennifer was trying to get back at her. So they reconcile. They don't get back together because Jennifer is being given a promotion and transferred to another ship. But apparently, this is Jennifer's healthiest breakup. And it's not that healthy. So yeah, that's saying something, I think. But it's just hilarious how both of them just did not handle the breakup in an emotionally mature way. Milner just ghosted, and Jennifer had the first opportunity decided to get back. Yeah, I can see why they initially got together though. Probably better for both of them that they broke up, but somehow this has been probably both of those healthiest breakup. Which, I don't know what that has to say about them, but it definitely says something. But, they hunted nanites though, granted, both of them, basically trying to mess with each other, for that bad term, or get things over with, makes the situation worse. And thankfully they're able to actually work together in the end, and disrupt the signal that's causing the nanites to, behave as a collective. Thankfully it's not Borg related, I can't want to say it's Voyager related, but it's not. But apparently, in a parallel universe that's on a much smaller scale than the main Star Trek universe, there's an Intrepid-class ship that got sucked into the main universe and trying to get the stuff they need to create a rift to get back to the main universe. They create a nanite swarm. And apparently they've been in a month of hell. And I forget it probably was Milner who said, just a month? Because there was an episode, a two-part episode of Star Trek Voyager called Year of Hell, which was undone with time travel. But this is how the other part with Boimler got connected. He basically got to arrange that this Admiral, who's sick of milking whales, which he also does in that other parallel universe, to devote all his energy and efforts into getting this getting this Intrepid ship, whose name I totally forgot, but get that ship back to its own universe. Give him an actual meaningful task, helping other people rather than milking space whales. There's also a minor plot point, not too long, but we apparently learned that Tallinn has a favorite musician. And, literally they show a couple of times where she's barely holding her emotions in check, but in her typical Vulcan way. And she actually meets him, and learns that he practices Vulcan meditative techniques and has adopted some Vulcan practices, which is just amazing. And then Tendi gets her a signed autograph of the musician. Was it Croc? Maybe something along those lines. And Tallinn in her usual thing is what's this? A spin to face kind of deal, and typical Vulcan response, and when Tendi says, "Oh, I just recycled," and then Tallinn is no, I'll hold on to it in case I need to study handwriting samples. She is clearly unhinged. You can see why she's much better fit for the Cerritos than she was on the Vulcan ship she was originally on. So that's the plot and all that going on. So, one, we should address, discuss what each character learns, because that's the core of this episode. Boimler learns that he is seen and appreciated for his skills, his overthinking by his superiors. Shaxs, on the other hand, the Ransom and Beckett thinks he loves getting in danger, and that's literally how the episode ends, with him running away as they talk about a new dangerous mission because they think he likes going in danger when he doesn't. But Boimler, they do understand him. And Boimler knowing that was a real good confidence booster for him, because it does happen often where his confidence and self-esteem is brought back down because he misunderstands something. And by the end of the episode, it comes back up. But this is really, I think, the first episode where it's shown that his superiors do see him for his skills and appreciate his skills as they are. They appreciate that he overthinks things. They appreciate that he's very good at getting out of sticky situations. They appreciate that from him. Rutherford and Tendi, not too much going on with their characters. Probably going to go on more, but hey, sometimes you can't talk about every single character's plotline and overarching character story in one episode, because guess what? You wouldn't be able to talk about all the characters then. Talaine doesn't get much character development, but learning more that she does have interests beyond logic is definitely something that did not expect, but it does show how she's basically the Mariner equivalent of a Vulcan. And then Mariner definitely has a huge plot point, story arc, character arc in this episode. Basically, she, along with Jennifer, learned that maybe, to helpfully break up, they need to actually discuss things instead of burying things and walking away trying to avoid the emotionally hard conversation. But that's just such a Mariner thing to do. Though, I think it's good that they did have the conversation for both their characters, but especially for Mariner, because she's our main character. And as she matures as an officer, which we have already seen in this season, she needs to, learn the benefit and the importance of healthy, proper communication. Because, okay, in a relationship, it's still very important to communicate very properly, but life or death situation, she does not communicate things correctly, or there's a personnel conflict between her and another crew member, that could cause things to go bad. In fact, the conflict between Jennifer and Mariner made the Nanite swarm much worse, because they were not properly communicating and it interfered with their jobs. If they had just communicated, things might have been a lot better. They both messed up and both learned the important lesson that hopefully both take away and grow from it. I think Mariner will, because we'll probably see her again. If we see Jennifer again, I'll be surprised, but I wouldn't object. But that's all I got for today. I would love to hear your thoughts on the best exotic Nanite hotel in the comment section down below. So the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks came out the other day. It's the 4th episode of the 5th and final season, A Farewell to Farms. So this episode is different. It opens very differently than most of the other episodes, because after the cold open, which establishes that the Klingon from, we've seen him in several other episodes, including the season finale of last episode of season and all that. We find out that he's back on his parents' blood wine farm, so cultivating blood wine, and apparently he's been stripped of his captaincy. That's the premise. Mariner's also trying to get in contact with him, but he doesn't want to talk to her. And Mariner and Boimler then show up, and apparently Boimler's going through a bit of a obsession with Klingon culture and all that stuff right now. So, he's been made aware of this obsession, which even Mariner's finding a bit, different, unusual, overbearing, you could even say that. And so he's weird, obscure rites he's aware of. He's all of a sudden fine with violence, but in a way, this is part of his character where he's becoming more confident, maybe a little more rolling with the punches a little bit, especially here on Kronos, because Klingons punch a lot more than Starfleet does. Anyhow, Mariner hatches, with Boimler's knowledge, hatches up a plan to get the Klingon captains his captaincy back. And turns out that the Klingon from episode 1 or episode 2 of season 1 is actually on the Oversight Council, but the person in charge of the Oversight Council does not want to give the captaincy back at all because apparently his brother was killed by that Klingon, whose name I just cannot remember. I should have looked it up before recording my review. Anyhow, they go through a bunch of ritual trials, including invoking a very obscure, the trials they invoke to get his command back, his captaincy back, is actually also a very obscure ritual that has not been done in like 200 years. But also invoke another obscure ritual called the Rite of Conscription to literally enter the group to conscript the head of the Oversight Council, because the final one is the rite of sacrifice. So, the idea is make the head be the one who has to be sacrificed. It works out in the end, and turns out Boimler and Mariner also needed a Klingon ship because that dude was not letting them get any Starfleet vessels into at least the section of space of the Klingon Empire that Starfleet wanted to go in to check out some space fissures. And which, by the way, that connects up with the ongoing plot that we've had in the season where, temporal rifts and all that, and turns out they're being made artificially. What could be going on there? But meanwhile, back on the Cerritos, they're fearing some food critics from Dr. Megnemo's home planet back home. And of course, apparently his planet, very obsessed with food and all that, and getting a bad, critique from a culinary critic is just the worst thing that can happen. Or those food critics do not like Dr. McMahan's cooking, both the replicated stuff and the actual stuff. And yet when they get back on the homeworld, they'll, acting like everything's, tastes good. Well, that's also because, the Cerritos, the Freeman suspected something was off and literally switched that food with something that was intended to be disgusting. And turns out they lost their taste buds. But honestly, this is the B plot, which reads just to fill time, not even really a contrast in some way, was just to, I guess, give us some insight in Dr. Megnemo's character, which implies that he might have something important to go on. Again, we know more about his culture, but also, another thing that we learn out is, the fact that he's a psychologist is basically the Klingon equivalent of being a peace treaty broker, I guess, or a Romulan equivalent of not being sneaky, or a Cardassian equivalent of not being a fascist. Like something along those lines. Like he's just an outlier in his culture, which makes him perfect for the Cerritos. Lynn is not the average Vulcan. Tendi's not the average Orion. He just fits in perfectly there. But apparently he's, despite being a psychologist, he's still a pretty good cook, apparently. And also, he says that he cooks the mind. But, literally, he's able to use his psychology to explain why the food critics lost their sense of taste and how they're going to work through it. As long as they're footing the catering bill, which I forget who it was, but commented that, is that even ethical? Might have been Tendi, and then Mariner's just let him have it. Not Mariner, Captain Freeman. But the mother and daughter, so Mariner definitely would say that. So yeah, I think this episode is probably, I don't know if it's my favorite episode, it's not the funniest and all that, but it's still a really good episode, and it really reveals important information about all these temporal rifts and fissures that have been going on. We haven't gotten many of them, but they've been referenced in passing. We had those Cerritos, where the Cerritos passed through one and they had mentioned that there'd been a number of them. We have the Tiny Intrepid from the Nanite Hotel episode 1. And now we got this episode, which they actually get some good scans of them now. So things are building up, and apparently they're artificial. So what could be going on? We just gotta wait and see. So that's all I got to say, but I would love to hear your thoughts on A Farewell to Farms in the comment section down below. So the old saying, better late than never? Well, I'm finally getting around to reviewing the 5th episode of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5. The episode is Starbase 80? The Cerritos hits an anomaly and navigation gets taken out, so they have to go to a nearby starbase for repairs, and it happens to be Starbase 80, which is considered by everyone to be the worst starbase ever. We saw a glimpse of it was it last season or the season before, when Mariner was temporarily transferred there and she hijacked out, well, resigned because she didn't want to be there because she describes it as awful, and she's basically traumatized by it, and she does not want to be there. She was willing to take the 30-year impulse journey to the next nearest Starbase. So, yeah, she does not want to be there. Captain Freeman also doesn't want to really be there because, as we saw in Dos Cerritos, the first episode of this season, in the alternative reality, she was sent there as well, and she does not want Starbase AD to, get her or wherever. So, basically, they are going in with apprehensions. Everyone has apprehensions about Starbase AD. Mariner is convinced it's cursed. Well, before they have to go in, they can't use the transporters because apparently Starbase AD's transporters aren't working. They have to basically do the decon chamber from Star Trek Enterprise. By the way, there's a lot of Star Trek Enterprise references in this episode, and Ransom puts way too much of that decontamination gel on. Way too much. And anyhow, they do eventually meet who I presume is the station commander, though she, I think, calls herself a special ambassador or something like that, but regardless, pretty much a lot of the people who work on Starbase AD are wearing Star Trek Enterprise era uniforms. But that's cool and all, and actually those are some of my favorite uniforms from an actual working uniform standpoint, and their jumpsuit makes way more sense. And so Starbase AD being so run down makes some sense to have that, because one, it's more practical for the situation, but it's also a sign that they're not getting the resources that they need from Starfleet, so they're making do with whatever they have. They don't have comm badges or even handheld communicators. They're using wall comms all over the place. Their main engineering, the gravity is reversed and they can't get that fixed. Basically, the station's run down and it's not getting the resources they need. So, the Cerritos is already a lower decks ship. It's not given prestige assignments. It's not given the recognition or glory it deserves, and all that. Well, Starbase 80 is basically the Cerritos equivalent of the Cerritos. So a big part of the overarching narrative of this episode is that it's dispelling the perception the Cerritos has of Starbase 80 and the perception that we all have as fans, showing us it's not really bad, it's not this awful place, it's not great, but that's because it's not getting the resources it needs to operate. Though, like I said, they got old technology all over the place, they got old uniforms, cool uniforms, practical uniforms, but still old and technically outdated. So, that's a big part of this episode, showing that. But the fact that Starbase 80 is outdated on that technology is actually what helps save the day, because that anomaly that disrupted the Cerritos' navigation, well, it was caused by a non-corporeal entity that was trying to make contact with corporeal that accidentally possesses one of the cetacean ops officers, I forget which one, and that starts spreading throughout the Cerritos crew whenever they're using their comm badges. So the Starbase 80 staff crew are fine because they're using all the wall comms, not comm badges. Mariner, Freeman, and Ransom are not all affected, but everyone else is. And the reason why Ransom and Freeman aren't affected is because the chief engineer has them going around doing his job for him because he can't get the stuff done and repaired. And Mariner's only saved because the Starbase 80's commander, who's an Elorian, by the way, a young one but still an Elorian, rips Mariner's comm badge off and destroys it because she recognizes what's going on. And once Mariner comes down, because, she's convinced Starbase 80 is out to get her, she actually recognizes, yeah, if I wasn't so obsessed with making sure Starbase 80 didn't get me, I might have been more observant. But yeah. And of course, Starbase 80's doctor figures out what to do. He grabs a chair and hits the cetacean ops officer, and that gets the non-corporeal entity out. and he says, "Oh, just medical stuff." Really fun. I kind of want a Starbase 80 show, just truly a ragtag crew of Starfleet officers trying to do their best with limited to no resources. The only time we really got to see that was season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise. Voyager did that a little bit in their Year of Horror episodes, two-parter, but that's really should have been more Voyager and they never did, but they were still on a nice ship, not, still connected. They actually probably were more connected than Starbase 80 was, because at least they had updated uniforms. And so the episode ends is the Cerritos decides to stay a little bit longer and help Starbase 80 fix a lot of the technical issues and all that. So I do wonder if they did resolve that situation where half the station was owned by a gang because of a misnegotiated treaty. I do wonder if they actually fixed that. But like gravity and the main engineering, all that, and a bunch of other small stuff, they definitely got fixed properly. Though I think Freeman is still trying to catch a bat that the chief engineer asked her to do, a space bat thing. Yeah. Again, she doesn't really get any character development here, more of just the comic relief, because I think the hardest episode was to get Milner to grow as a Starfleet officer. She's already grown, she's getting used to, just doing her job, loving her job. Now that she's now trying to buck the system at every step of the way, she's actually thriving, and she's also, I think, making things better in the way that she couldn't when she was bucking the system, because she was not bucking it in a constructive way. I guarantee you, if an admiral orders the Cerritos to do something stupid, yeah, Milner is going to speak up. She's not going to take that lying down, but, she recognizes that, yeah, someone probably needs to, get some of these tasks done, And it's always shown that the mission of Starfleet, she always was into, but she didn't like a lot of the institutional stuff. And while she's becoming more accepting of it, I guarantee you, she's still willing to buck authority when needed. And in some ways, this episode was kind of the case, because, she did buck authority, the station commander, because she didn't like Starbase 80. So part of her growth in this episode was to, accept that not every station is going to be perfect, and accept that Starbase 80 isn't out to get her. Which, if she wants to, continue in Starfleet, she needs to accept that, a Starbase will not be out to get you, unless it's possessed by a non-corporeal entity, I guess. Or there was an episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine where Deep Space Nine got infected with a type of parasitic alien that really just was like a dog, so O'Brien made a digital doghouse for it. But the point being is that Milner needed essentially to grow out of her superstitions regarding Starbase 80 to help Starbase 80. Does that make sense? Because I think I didn't make sense. But you know what? There's so much more to discuss. Small little things, other references, I'm sure, that I totally forgot to mention. Like, for example, they don't have replicators in Starbase 80, so they have food vendors scattered about. And they don't have a holodeck either, or at least they don't have a working one, so they have an arcade instead. Which, by the way, was a fun bit there. So, there's a lot more to discuss, like I said, but let's get the discussion opened up in the comment section down below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. The latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks is Season 5, Episode 6 of Gods and Angels. So, the premise of the episode: the Cerritos is conducting peace negotiations between two societies of energy-based non-corporeal beings. So they got cubes and spheres. So yeah. And that's the backdrop of all of this. And there's also a relatively new ensign on board who is causing some problems, making messes and all that. The Cerritos is the 6th ship she's been transferred to, and Captain Freeman's like, well, let's transfer her again. Milner's on the other hand. One grabs Captain Freeman's pad out of her hand and looks at the ensign's, personnel history, even though she doesn't have the clearance to do so. It's Milner, go figure. And she's like, no, let me try to help her and all that. And so that's the premise, the plot line of the episode, the main plot line. Milner taking this ensign, who she sees a lot of herself in, under her wing to try to help her become a better officer, to find her place in Starfleet, all that. Well, I forget the ensign's name. I should have written it down, but why would I? Anyhow, she's a demigod, so way back in the original series, if you remember, the Enterprise encountered the Greek gods. Well, apparently one of them had a child who eventually decides at some point to join Starfleet, and her power is she can make really crappy lightning bolts. Yeah, she's embarrassed of her power and all that, and so yeah. Well, anyhow, Mariner tries her best. She actually does succeed in some ways, but this ensign is she's so concerned about making a bad impression. She's making a bad impression, and like for example, she's 30 minutes late to meeting up with Mariner, but we find out that's because she went to the quarters of the cube that they were supposed to unlock the door and babysit, because it was the cube was the child, the daughter, I believe, of one of the leader cube. Anyhow, and so she went there first and hid some evidence because she was panicking. I don't think Mariner would have ever done that, but Mariner definitely would do some stupid stuff, though normally not out of panic. But anyhow, the room is a mess, so they're convinced there's a murder investigation now, but they need to keep it on the down low because of the peace talks. So the ensign actually volunteers to do it, and actually makes sense. Mariner agrees that, yeah, they'll lower down the radar and all that, they'll be able to investigate, but it does not go well. They end up causing the hostilities to resume between them. And I had this thought, like, well, could this cube be making friends with one of the spheres, especially once we learn that one of the spheres is missing as well? Yeah, it turns out, and apparently not only did they get together, but they already had a child in the showtime who is half cube, half sphere. So there's probably a technical name for that shape, but yeah, I thought it would have been like one of those rounded spheres where you still get the 6 sides, but the sides are rounded. That I thought that would have been neat, but they didn't do that. But anyhow, at the very end, because of the mess she caused tampering with evidence, the ensign said to the brig, even though, she did solve the problem. Well, Mariner also, I think, did a lot of solving. Really, what truly solved at least the conflict between the spheres and the cubes is the two sphere, the sphere and the cube who got together and fell in love. They came, asked everyone what's going on, and presented their child. And then, of course, what do the sphere and cube leaders do? They just start basically being grandparents and wanting to spoil their grandchild. That's essentially what they start doing. It is just, a hilarious concept. But I should also say, during their fight, the spheres and cubes, they go out of the Cerritos and form a big cube and a big sphere. Very unoriginal. Ransom actually has a line like they lack originality or something along those lines. But anyhow, the ensign, who's actually not really stood out for much command kind of stuff and all that, but wants to be an engineer, is really good with electricity despite having, often causing things to short circuit, devises a plan in order to, basically drain the cubes and spheres of their energy so that way they could stop fighting, and it works. But like I said, because of tampering with the evidence that was suspected to be a crime scene, she is thrown in the brig, and of course, Mariner's giving her advice like, yeah, that bed's actually, the bench is actually quite comfortable. Because Mariner has that experience, and Mariner decides she's going to stick around to try to get to know this ensign a little better as well. And the ensign has this line where the brig is her favorite place, and Mariner is like, yep, something like, no, that one, or something along those lines. But really, a big part of this episode is Mariner basically seeing another version of herself in a different way. Yes, she's seen that alternate universe of her who was, basically became, very strict and all that and not fun at all, but who also by being so strict was just totally miserable and was willing to, run away to another universe where she could just be lovably insubordinate once again. So she's got to see that version of herself, but here, this is more of a, I would say, more of a proper foil in a narrative sense, as she sees a character who embodies lots of the traits that she once experienced, insubordination, making a mess. So with Mariner is more of an act, not actual problems, but Mariner identifies that she just needs somebody to believe in her and that will help her. And part of, I think, Mariner's character growth in becoming a better Starfleet officer has to do with the fact that she has friends who cares about her and actually want her to succeed, rather than her parents. She needed somebody who wasn't, already a superior to her, whether it be in Starfleet or in family relationships, to be supporting her. And here Mariner sees somebody who needs some encouragement from somebody who's a little higher than her, a little more experienced, but not super high up. And works out pretty well. So I do wonder if we're going to see more of this ensign. There's also another line going on with Boimler. Basically, he's been reading the tablet that he stole from the alternative Cerritos, and basically he's trying to copy that universe's Boimler to try to get ahead. He's going to come to a reckoning with that at some point. I just feel it. But, him and Rutherford learned the wrong lesson from it, which Tendi rightfully points out. I swear, I think Tendi and Tallinn are the only two people with common sense on the Cerritos at times. Tallinn has some small moments here, nothing too major, but going back to Boimler, he learned that his alternate universe self made friends with Tiana, the doctor. So what does he decide to do? Well, he has to be friends with the doctor now too. It goes badly, but it also works out because going back to the Mariner plot, the ensign, using her powers, temporarily tries to drain them of the spheres and cubes of their power, but it fails and they actually get really mad and all of that. But anyhow, Boimler accidentally gets a lightning bolt stuck up in his rear end. Yeah, and Tiana removes it. And he actually does, earn some respect from her and is actually invited to her book club. So he's making progress, though. It was either Rutherford earlier in the story or Tendi who points out that this is just the Hawaii thing all over again, which it is. He needs to relearn that lesson. And this time, the problem for Boimler is he's thinking, I ain't being myself. But he's not being himself from his universe. And that's why he's going to come to a reckoning with all of that at some point. And Rutherford, you learned the wrong lesson from Boimler's success. He just happened to fail upward in this situation. It's not always going to work out. Hopefully Tendi and Tallinn and Mariner will be able to talk some sense into them. I can see it going really bad, they're going really funny. But that's pretty much all I got. There's some other small things I could discuss, but you know what? Let's expand the discussion into the comment section down below, where I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Episode 7 of the 5th season Star Trek Lower Decks came out on Thanksgiving. Why did you come out on a holiday? Plan better, please. Please plan better. So that's why you're getting my review late. Actually, all my Lower Decks reviews have been late, so that's a poor excuse for me. But anyhow, it's time for me to talk about and present my review of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 5, Episode 7, Fully Dilated. So, in this episode, they're closing another rift between parallel dimensions. This time it's a universe where there's a nice purple hue to everything. Speaking of, that's a little better. Yeah, let's go with this purple hue for the rest of the video. Why not? So anyhow, not only is this other universe purple, it is a purple Enterprise from it. Instead of being a dull gray, it's a nice purple instead. And while they don't actually get to interact with that purple Enterprise, or purple Prize, and that's a really bad pun, they do realize that before they close the rift, that some technology from that purple Enterprise got left behind on the nearby planet. A pre-warp society. So, Tallinn, Mariner, and Tendi are set down undercover. They get they get plastic cosmetic surgery so that way they can blend in with the natives. And then they just go down. They find what was a crash shutter and Data's head. A purple Data, mind you, but still a Data. They do make a lot of Star Trek episode references, but there's one reference I need to mention because it's kind of important in this episode, and I didn't mention why it's important yet because I haven't mentioned it yet. This planet experiences time dilation. For every 1 second that passes on board the Cerritos, 1 week passes on the planet. So it's not as bad as that episode of Voyager where 1 second was a year on the planet. I forget the name of that episode, but they sent the doctor down because he could adjust to the time dilation thing and it wouldn't affect him. So that was more because of they did more technobabble stuff with his they can speed up his photo processing. Here they're just like, yeah, you adjust to it because time is actually just moving a little bit slow. It's not or moving faster, something like that. They don't even do technobabble like they did in Voyager. They just send Tallinn, Mariner, and Tendi down to the planet. But they also mention because they get stranded a little past their beam out because Boimler spilled food on the replicator console. Well, him and Rutherford, and they are frantically trying to clean up. And every now and then it cuts back to Cerritos with Boimler and Rutherford trying to clean up. That's definitely the comedic beat of the episode. Not much going on with it, it's just a comedic beat. So hopefully Rutherford and Boimler learn not to copy their alternative universe selves. I'm just saying. But because they get stranded, I think it was Mariner makes a reference to Carbon Creek, which was an episode of Star Trek Enterprise, where it's revealed that T'Pol's grandmother was briefly stranded on Earth, and her and the rest of her crew that survived had to hide among humans for a little bit without interfering and impacting development. They also make a reference to times the arrow of Data's head, which obviously they had to make that reference. So these are not the only 2 episodes where we see Data's head disconnected from his body. There was another episode where the Enterprise lost power and Riker took Data's head off to get it to main engineering so Data could do some stuff to fix it. Complicated stuff. I don't remember that episode that well. But the point being is lots of great Star Trek references that are fun that make sense. Like some of these are events that, yes, there's a good chance that 1, people will know about because they involve the Enterprise, or 2, these are probably historically significant events and therefore may be included in training. Yeah, I can definitely see briefings on what you do if you encounter time dilation planets, and they will reference Voyager by this time. I could see, Carbon Creek being used as an example of how to stay hidden among a native population to not impact the development but still survive and await rescue. I can see that stuff being included in briefings because, what's better, a hypothetical scenario in universe, of course, because this is all fiction anyhow, a hypothetical scenario in universe or a real scenario in universe. I would go with the real ones because you can do more discussions and all that. It's not going to be a perfect situation, therefore will be a better learning opportunity for Starfleet officers. There I go, I just justified Star Trek references in Lower Decks. Now that all that's out of the way, so let's actually discuss what Tendi, Mariner, and Tallinn get up to on the planet. So not only do they find Data's head, and they get stranded, so they have to live. Well, Tallinn decides to get really big into agriculture and gardening and make some ginormous plants, and there's some puns in there. Some puns, especially regarding some of the melons that she grew. And then what does Tendi do? Well, she builds a water wheel to generate power to power Data's head. Well, first she does a crank generator, then she switches to a water wheel so that she doesn't have to crank as much, which Data is impressed by. Though I do want to say one thing real quick. The reason why Tendi is doing this, well, Tallinn is just, doing stuff to survive. Captain Freeman is considering promoting either Tallinn or Tendi to the senior science officer position. Like I said, they're not really Lower Decks anymore. Watch my video on when I discuss the cancellation of Lower Decks with Season 5 being the end of it. I do address how they're moving on up and no longer really Lower Decks. And this kind of proves it. They're being considered for promotion to bridge officer, not just officers on the bridge, but senior bridge officers. And, because Tallinn as a Vulcan is really good at all science stuff, Tendi feels insecure. Yes, they're friends, but that doesn't prevent her insecurities. So she's, with this extra time that they have on the plane, she's trying to basically pad out her resume. And can I say, both do a pretty good job, which Data does recognize. And Data also recognizes that Tendi's going too far and needs to take some sleep. Yeah, about that. She doesn't do that too well. Again, when Tendi gets a mindset on something, boy does she get her mindset on something. And what is Mariner doing all this? Well, she thinks back to the episode where Captain Picard got trapped in basically a memory simulation thing and with the flute and the Rhinican flute, I believe. Anyhow, she gets obsessed, so she thinks like, okay, she needs to basically recreate that experience for herself, find herself an alien family or friends of some form, and also learn to play a soap flute. It's crazy. She does learn to play a soap flute badly, and this is so Mariner. She gets thrown in prison, then she becomes good friends with the prisoners. So that's actually something. And granted, then the episode realized, yes, she did find her alien, found family. Just happened to be with all the prisoners. Why did that seem such a Mariner thing? Because way back in season 1, she said that she loves the brig. Well, the more things change, the more things stay the same, and yeah, that fits. That definitely fits with Mariner in this episode. But anyhow, eventually Boimler and Rutherford do signal that they are ready to beam them out, and they have to rush. So there's been this native named Snell who has been basically looking all the time. Anyhow, he sees Data's head. Well, they convince the townspeople that he was a loser. And Data explains afterwards, when I think Tendi asks, that everyone already thought Snell was a loser, so they're not impacting or violating the Prime Directive or anything there. And yeah, Snell was a loser, always looking, trying to find something. He probably is on the local HOA as well, is my guess. No, since everyone thinks he's a loser, he's probably been kicked out, but he still says that he's the chair. Yeah, that's probably more likely. And they beam out, and then before the Cerritos sends Purple Data back to the Purple Enterprise in the Purple Universe, Data's head and Captain Freeman have a conversation, especially about the senior science officer position. And because he was in the field observing the two applicants, he could make some recommendations. So you think this will go bad for Tendi? After all, she did kind of, obsess and kind of lose some focus because of all this. But what Data saw is that T'Lyn and Tendi work really well together, and that when one of them thinks they're competing, because T'Lyn didn't even realize this, mind you, typical Vulcan, that it hurts both of them, especially Tendi, I would assume. We don't get to see the conversation, but the fact that Captain Freeman decides to promote both of them to the senior science officer position, I would say probably that was how they work better together, and especially splitting them apart or somehow putting them in competition does not do good for their job performance. Communication breaks down, one of them really goes off the deep end. So that's a bit exaggerated. Of course, it's a comedy, but if we take the core of it, it's basically saying that these two people work really well together and they don't perform at their best when they've been separated, or especially in a situation where maybe their communication breaks down, they don't realize that they are competing but separated, but still together, working at the same time. Does that make sense? Because it barely made sense to me. Is there more I can discuss? Oh, certainly. Small little things here and there and all that, but the fact, I still love how on the planet, Mariner probably does the craziest thing, but it just works for her, and how it so nicely connects to her earlier characterization, but still shows that, she's a, much more well-rounded character who's learned a lot from her experience, but some things just don't change with her. And of course, Tendi learns, I think, a good lesson too. What's that lesson? I don't know, but I think she learns it. Actually, I do think I know what it is. I think it's largely that she learns, basically, what her strengths are. And really, when you look at it, they're both really good at science across the board, but T'Lyn, especially on that planet, is excellent at agriculture. And Tendi, you have a knack for mechanical engineering. I don't think she wants to be an engineer, but the fact is, they got both some pretty good skills, and they're really good science officers, good at thinking through problems. Like literally, in a pre-industrial society, Tendi invents hand generators and water generators just to power a positronic android's head. I don't know how much power Data uses, but I don't think it's an insignificant amount. And the giant grapes, everything. T'Lyn, they were really good at agriculture. They both learned a lot of science in that year they were on the plane. Yeah, by the way, they were all down there a year. they're now a year older than everyone. For T'Lyn, not too much. Vulcans age at a little over half the rate of humans, or slower than humans. But still, everyone else is now a year older than everyone. They're still all a year older. Just reset the transporter patterns and use the patterns from when they beamed down. There we go. I mean, they did that in an episode of season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation with Dr. Pulaski and all those other people on that planet where they were genetically experimenting with children. They were breaking Federation law. I wonder if Lower Decks ever gonna mention that. Probably not, but that seems like such a Lower Decks thing. Oh well. Anyhow, that's why I'm going to end this review. Yeah, is it a weird ending? Sure, why not? But it's Lower Decks and weird is part of the game. Anyhow, I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know your thoughts on Fully Dilated in the comment section down below. So I just watched the 8th episode of the 5th and final season of Star Trek Lower Decks. The episode is called Upper Decks. So continuing the tradition of the 8th episode of each season, this breaks from the normal pattern of how the episodes are laid out. Okay, they did that also earlier on in the episode with the Klingon episode. They broke a little bit, but still was kind of their normal shtick and all that. But this one broke with it because we don't follow the Lower Deckers at all. Well, we do get 2 scenes with them at the beginning and at the end. Instead, basically we get to see what the bridge crew, the senior officers, the upper decks do throughout the regular day. That's what we get to see and everything that goes on during all of it. So, this episode probably should have aired over a month ago because of Halloween, because our Lower Deckers, they're carving pumpkins, on their day off. And of course, they have this is clearly, intended to be humorous, but the method like, yeah, around here we're the actors, us Lower Deckers, we do our thing, while the bridge crew, the senior officers, they just do boring paperwork. And then we get to see what the captain and the rest of the bridge officers' day is like. So the captain has to, do a bunch of stuff, attend meetings. Well, it starts with a morning briefing, of course, but actually not really any meetings, just a lot of, show her face around the crew. And then, of course, her plot line, her storyline actually has a really good ending, and I want to save that for the end of the episode. Yeah, because it's at the end of the episode. But, so, Shaxs has to leave the meeting early because his demons from the Cardassian application resurface and he has to meditate to confront them. And then actually at the end he does, and he also, because there's some alien invaders involved, while meditating he takes down a bunch of alien invaders, not even realizing it. And then at the end when the council mentioned that therapy would give him even more tools to combat his demons, he's like, when do we start? And then that connects up to the end of Dr. Tiana's arc as well, because apparently the captain has received some complaints about her pain management, because she has a very high pain tolerance, and therefore she doesn't keep stock of pain meds and other things to help people deal with pain. Well, anyhow, she gets, I'm guessing, one of her nurses to basically experiment on her, testing her pain tolerance to try to find the limit of it, because, she's a pain addict, I think. Which kind of fits nicely with, some of the other episodes. Like, there's the one episode where her and Shaxs in the holodeck, and clearly they're doing, role play, but, she wants to do all the violent stuff, and he wants to talk about their feelings. Connects back nicely to that episode. Well, anyhow, and then literally during the fight with the alien invaders, guess what? She gets shot point blank with a kill shot, and she just basically shrugs it off because of all the experiments she's been doing for pain tolerance. But going back to the end of the episode, when Shaxs gets excited about a new message to combat his inner demons, he accidentally, causes, he slams his fist down on the table in excitement, and that spills some hot, I think chowder might have been soup on Dr. Tiana, and she's like, yeah, I'll go get some more pain meds, because apparently that was the limit of her pain. Hot food being spilled on her. So, we found that out. Meanwhile, Ransom is overseeing a group from, I think, Beta Shift and Delta Shift, and who are basically herding some space cows. They have an actual name and all that, but they're holding space cows, he seems like he's being ineffective, but he claims that he's just putting on that act so that way they hate him, so they band together against him to prove him wrong, basically, or something along those lines. So one of them did notice him adding that bit to his log, and yeah. And then she leaves saying that, yeah, everyone thinks you're such a doofus, nobody will believe me anyway. But I do want to say, that was fun. That also, the scientists who are studying those space cows, they're not really space cows, I forget what they're actually called, but that's what Ransom calls them, so I'm sticking with it, was actually an agent of the alien invaders because they wanted to harvest those space cows' natural cloaking abilities for their own thing because they are basically tired of being ignored. Then why are you wanting cloaking? That makes it easier for people to ignore you. I'm just saying. And then one last thing about the space cows, though, when they release them out of the Cerritos, they put ear tags on them like that people do with cows or bison and other creatures that live in the wild for tracking purposes to monitor populations and all that. I thought that was a great, fun little reference right there. And then what is Billups doing? Well, a different ensign. It's the first time I've seen her. I forget her name. We gotta make sure I write down these names. Anyhow, she discovers that there's a safety thing or a hazard warning, and basically apparently we learned all the jury rigging that he's done in engineering, and it's just now in a cascade affair that him and his ensign have to complete. Well, he sends everyone else out, and she only has to complete them with him because she's the one who pointed out and he's like, this is going to be a great learning experience for you. And yeah, and it goes. And then at the end, well, a cadet walks up and says that he noticed another hazard light blinking. He's like, okay, time to do it again. And it says after having a near-death experience because of the exact same thing. And where does that leave the captain? Well, her plot has intersected, and because she remembered one thing that these alien invaders, I forget their name, but they can't take a compliment. So she starts complimenting them and they run away because they can't take it. And then it ends, she has one more meeting on her schedule, but she decides, no, I really don't want to do it. She wants her time for herself, and we learn that it's her and her husband, the Admiral Freeman's anniversary. And of course, I forget his name, but he's definitely portrayed as, I think, the person who actually does probably all the actual paperwork on the ship. And he says she has one more meeting in the holodeck, and it's revealed that he, a month in advance, got in contact with Admiral Freeman so that way they could spend their anniversary together on the holodeck with a nice romantic dinner and date. He planned that a month in advance and put it in Captain Freeman's schedule so that way nothing else could interrupt her from that, except for her wanting to take a break from her schedule. Now, she was hoping she would just be able to have a nice long chat with Admiral Freeman, her husband, but instead they got something much better, all because the person who probably does all the work on the ship, or at least all the paperwork, planned ahead. And then we go to our last scene, which is with our main lower decks again. And basically they'll, just like, yep, they had a good day off, which they probably did need. Everyone in Starfleet needs a couple good days off a week. Not much, a week, because of all the crazy stuff that they get into. But anyhow, they mentioned that both, I think Tendi and Boimler mentioned that they saw her father on the ship with her mother. And she doesn't, believe, and like they apparently missed the alien incursion and all that. And like Mariner doesn't believe like her father's there. Would have been nice if because she probably would want to see her father spend probably a couple months or days in US. I'm not sure. All the crazy stuff has happened. It seems like such a short time frame for lower decks. But the point being is, and then of course, Tallinn gets in on it with a bit of a humor thing that she saw both Captain Freeman and Admiral Freeman be sucked into a painting. Not really, but Mariner then gets excited because that goes back to at the beginning of the episode how Mariner had just got back from an away mission where she gets sucked into a painting. So you can kind of see why that would have sparked her interest. And it's proving this. Tallinn does know how to tell a joke. And because she tells it so flatly, you can never tell if she's joking or not because she has the ultimate poker face. And that's where the episode ends. There's a lot of other stuff too, such as what's her name? Ensign Barnes apparently had been mutated in such a way that she both evolved and devolved at the same time. She still, it doesn't affect her sousaphone planning, but she still has, a little bit of reaction with Jafire because of that mutation stuff going on. Go figure, crazy. I mean, it is just crazy though, but ends up being well because she uses her sousaphone to fight the alien invaders. Again, her sousaphone performance was one of those attended by Captain Freeman, and there was another ensign's performance that Captain Freeman attended. Literally, her and the other, and only two people were in attendance. Her and the person who I think does all the actual paperwork on the ship. Only two people in attendance for the other one, who might have been actually the nurse that helped them, Dr. Tiana. Man, he's multitasking. And then, let's see, there was one other thing. Oh yeah, apparently another crewman's giving, birth has in the holodeck fertility something, and Freeman didn't even realize he was a human. Yeah, he looked human until, the thing started coming out of his gut. I mean, just crazy stuff. And instead of, it's a boy or it's girl type balloon, it says it's a life form. Makes me wonder about that person's species. I really do wonder. Sounds weird and exotic and alien, which is just so perfect for Star Trek. So that covers most of the events and all that. And really the point of this episode, I think, is to show that we often get so caught up in our main characters, we forget that other characters have their own adventures going on that our main characters don't see. And they kind of rip fun of that with, there's a scene where literally Boimler calls themselves the star of the show, Vase breaking the fourth wall. There's a scene where Mariner basically says that stop ruining her perception of what's actually going on, something along those lines. But essentially that is kind of true. We often, I think, not necessarily in real life, so it could definitely happen in real life, but with TV shows, there's always those other stories going on. The Shakespeare play in Hamlet, there was, I forget the name of it, but there was another play based off of it that followed two of the side characters and what they were going on. Rosen something? I forget. But that was also very much how Phineas and Ferb approached their Star Wars crossover. They didn't change anything in the main events. They just added the Phineas and Ferb characters in this, crossover parody, and how they impacted the main events or something like that, but not necessarily how, without necessarily destroying anything, I guess. I'm kind of losing the metaphor here, but the point being is that it's easy to see a background character and just assume, okay, the story is done, even if there's a lot more. So people who are into Star Wars like me, we probably get too obsessed with background characters. It happens a lot, and there's a lot of stories that follow background characters. Heck, Star Wars has 3 whole books just like these two, following background characters in canon, and that's not even getting into the ones they had in Legends. So perhaps I'm not the best audience for that because of Star Wars. I have a very good knowledge of how background characters can have their own stories, which can be rich and intriguing as well. But I think it's definitely something that's very important to remind ourselves. In Lower Decks, we've seen all the stuff the Lower Decks actually do to get Starfleet running and all that allows it to operate. But we can't forget that the senior officers of the bridge crew do their own stuff. Though the Lower Decks do say that it's their bridge crew who doesn't do anything. Unlike the bridge crews of Kirk, Picard, Janeway. I hope they mentioned Cisco. I don't remember. But the point is that we needed to be reminded of this, and it was a great fun change of pace and all that. So that's what I got to say. I would love to hear your thoughts on this episode in the comment section down below. It may have taken till the second to last episode, but I'm finally putting out my review for a Season 5 Star Trek Lower Decks episode on the day it drops on Paramount+. This is my review of Fissure Quest. So like I said, this is the second to last episode, and it's going to be a crazy finale from what I can tell, but I will be talking about spoilers, so let's discuss this episode. So we finally get to see what's going on with Boimler's transporter clone from way back early on. We finally get to see what he's doing. He doesn't say the organization he's working for. It's Section 31, guys. But they're actually doing something good for a change. Basically, William Boimler has been tasked with closing all the fissures. So he's been traveling the multiverse and he's sick of it. Basically, because it's all a rehash of the stuff he already knows. This episode, by the way, is clearly a commentary on stories using multiversal universe storytelling. There's a lot to be said about that, but I'll save that for a different section of this review. But I just wanted to make sure I put it out there in case I forget. So the episode opens up, we learn about, his crew. His first officer is apparently T'Pol, from a universe where Trip never died, or at least didn't die as soon. And his helmsman is Curzon Dax, from before the Dax Symphony was given to Jadzia in a different universe. Basically, most of his crew is all alternate universe. So in the post-credit scene, I guess, in wherever, way back when we saw him get sent off somewhere, there was other people on that ship, so what happened to them? Oh, and the doctor is Garrick, and is married to a holographic Bashir. Specifically, emergency medical hologram Bashir. You can't make this up. Well, you can't because it's all fiction. And then a shuttle comes through a rift in the rescue, and it's Mariner. But not our Mariner. No, that would be too simple. It's a Mariner who's an engineer who's risk averse. A Mariner who's risk averse. Yeah, that's definitely an alternative reality. But it does give Boimler some comfort having somebody he's somewhat familiar with, despite her not being as risk averse as a Mariner. William Boimler is familiar with. There's a lot of other small little things. Should I even mention the crew is all 90% Harry Kims? Yeah, Harry Kims. And they also rescue another Harry Kim in this episode, who happens to be a lieutenant. Unfortunately, he's a bit salty that the other Kims haven't been promoted yet. Yeah. So they go on an adventure and they eventually find the ship that's been creating the rifts. And what they realize is, and thanks to Mariner, that I should mention this Mariner is wearing gold, so clearly I kind of wish they'd done this with Mariner who stayed promoted way back, I think in season 1, where Captain Freeman tried to trick Mariner into requesting a transfer by promoting her. They should have done that one, because that would have been a neat in-joke into the show. But still, having a Mariner who's risk-averse is very different, so a later on scene is much more impactful because of that. But anyhow, I believe it was Mariner who figures out that what's happening is they're going into the wrong rifts. Because of conservation of energy. For once, they're using a real scientific concept, not just random technobabble. Technobabble is clearly a thing in this episode as well, but I'm just saying they are using a real concept for once. Basically, when the rift that the people are opening the rifts are, well, guess what's going on? Another rift is being created because of energy conservation, so Boimler and his crew have been going through the wrong rifts every single time. But eventually they're able to do technobabble stuff and able to meet up with the ship. They fire on it because, well, they think this person's doing it intentionally, and they are, but not maliciously. And we find out, but first they both crash on a planet, and they're arrested by the native population, who are described as feral, of a species that's normally not violent. And they figure out that the ship that they're chasing after, well, they're explorers too, but instead of exploring strange new worlds, they're exploring strange new universes. Which is a neat little switch on that formula. It also ties up with William Boimler's character, because he's sick of multiverses. Many of us in, I think, lots of properties are kind of sick of multiversal storytelling, even though it's still kind of new, but reboots and all that, that's a form of multiverse, and we are kind of sick of that stuff. And this episode has this message that it's fun to explore minute differences in our stories, or in us, in humanity. That's how they phrase it, but it also has this meta-narrative about, basically, you can explore different things and see how things work as things are just so slightly differently. People who do alternative history, it varies. Some people are very much, they're doing it because they want to create a world that's perfect to their ideology and all that. But some people do it because they're legitimately interested in how cause and effect impacts history, and thought experiments in alternative history or what ifs is how they explore that, which can be very great for fiction storytelling, but we do need to keep a sense of ourselves about things. I just need to put that out there because unfortunately the alternate history community has a lot of tankies and a lot of right-wingers in it, unfortunately, who, they are using alternate history to justify their ideology rather than exploring how things work if things are ever so slightly different in cause and effect and all that. People who do it properly, they do a good job because they understand it's a thought experiment in cause and effect analysis rather than in, wish fulfillment. Just gotta put that out there. But when we go outside of that, all our different represents, a lot of them are different takes. Let's just take the DuckTales 2017 series. I have the reviews of almost every episode on my channel, so if you want to check that out, I'll link the playlist up in the cards. But that is a different take on DuckTales, the original 80s, on a different take on the comics, but more inspired by the comics than the 80s series was. But it is still different, and basically a big thing that made a difference, what if we gave Huey, Dewey, and Louie actual personalities? And from there, a lot of other stuff too. But the point is, it is a different take, and it's a very enriching take, very exciting take. And sometimes though, you will have things that will seem like a lazy rehash. And I think this episode does have some commentary against the lazy rehash, that if you are going to tell stories with different universes and all that, make it mean something. Don't just copy an existing property, existing show just to make an easy buck. You need to do something with it, to tell a story that means something to the creators, but also the audiences as well, besides money, money, money. I don't know how much of that was intentional, but that's definitely the read I got on this episode. But I do need to mention, so they and the crew that's exploring the multiverse say reconcile. Well, they're exploring the multiverse in a different way, but the crew who's specifically doing it, and by the way, is Lady Stone, so the person who was working with Zephyr Cochrane in First Contact. Instead of making warp drives led by Cochrane, they're making multiversal transport drives or something led by Sloan. So very neat kind of twist on that how, yes, these two individuals are still working together, but because one's taking a different lead, they end up doing something different, which is just really reinforces my point where you can do these different takes, but it needs to mean something. And the idea that, well, if this person took lead, would they have developed a different kind of method of travel? Very interesting. They're also wearing Enterprise Zero uniforms as well, so I like that too. But there's more going on. Harry Kim, the one who's full lieutenant, steals the ship that can travel through the multiverse. He steals it and he tricks all the other Kims with him because he wants to take them all to his universe where they can actually be promoted. And the other Kims are like, what are you doing? We can see why this Kim got promoted. Janeway needed to placate him so he didn't take over the Voyager. I think that's what's going on there. But Harry Kim does deserve promotion. But at the same time, it's like the other Kims, they're content because they're in Starfleet, they're doing what they love. The promotion would just been a neat bonus. But this Kim, the Kim who tricks them and steals the ship, he's there for the rank. He's not there for exploration, and he's thus unstable. And of course, he accidentally starts destroying the multiverse because the ship is damaged, and he doesn't realize that, and he literally calls out technobabble. Well, he should have listened because he's dead, and the multiverse is going to be destroyed. But they do have a solution. The solution is they have to sacrifice one universe. Basically channel all the multiversal destroying energy into one universe, and that should be enough to save the rest of the multiverse. So William Boimler decides he's going to sacrifice his universe. I did have this thought though. Set into a universe taken over by the Borg, or a universe devoid of life, but you would need to know what those universes are in order for that to be a possibility. Though, does William Boimler not know about the incident with the multiple enterprises? I feel like he should have. I honestly, with the episode, in the episode Parallels, I feel like he should have known that stuff, especially the one with the multiple enterprises and that are racing. No, I feel like he should have, because he should know of at least one, but alas, he doesn't. He thought there was Milner thought there was only two, I believe. Or Kim. One of them. But regardless, they figured it out, but that would have been a better universe to send into because it's practically a dystopia anyhow, but the reason why he chose his universe is because he knows his twin, our Brad Boimler, should be able to solve it as long as he doesn't panic. Cuts to the Cerritos, and I should say the episode actually opens up with our lower deckers talking and all that, and basically William Boimler is mentioned, and they all believe that he died, and basically Boimler is wondering what kind of ventures he could have gotten into, and then cuts to the main episode, but then cuts back after William Boimler, who's the captain by the way, makes that decision, and guess what our Boimler does? Panics. Just like William Boimler said, as long as he doesn't do it, they'll be fine. He panics. Granted, getting a message from your transporter clone twin who you thought was dead, that probably contributed to Boimler's panic. But I do kind of hope like Talin or something takes a look at that and gives a more rational thing, and then they go tell Freeman and they hopefully put all the resources together. And speaking of putting resources together, I suspect putting resources together will be a part of the season finale. The previous episode was basically about seeing what the captain, what the senior officers, what the upper decks on Cerritos actually get to. And I think that's going to reinforce that the season finale, whatever it will be, I have no idea, is somehow going to bring them truly together in a way that way they can work together to solve the crisis. Granted, even I kind of had hoped that they wouldn't have gone too much multiversal ending stuff or just universe ending stuff in Lower Decks, but I do like how they did it, how they tied it in with character development. William Boimler, well not our Boimler, basically learns to appreciate the multiverse and how you can explore differences, minute but things that are still the same. The alternative Milner, well, she's risk-averse, but she takes a big risk in increasing the gravity around the warp core so they could actually successfully perform a microjump despite the dangers of it. She took that risk even though she was personally risk-averse. So a little bit of the Milner we know is in her. And so then the episode cuts back to our characters, and I think the biggest impact the story, Milner's gotten most of her development, but it's now time for her development, all the development that Boimler got in the last little bit that he needs to be the Starfleet officer he envisions himself truly as. That I think is what going to come in the finale. Tendi, Rutherford, Talin, they're all going to have their moments, I'm sure, as well. Hopefully bring every character arc that we saw over the 5 seasons of Lower Decks to a satisfying conclusion. Of course, those are just my thoughts on the episode, and my thoughts on what's going to come next and how things are going to connect together. I could be totally wrong, but I want to hear from you. Let's explore the possibilities. What you thought of this episode, what you think is going to happen next in the comment section down below. Let's explore strange new worlds. Let's explore strange new universes. And of course, live long and prosper. Oh man, I forgot to talk about a few other things. I should mention that Dr. Garrick, which is Dr. Ilham Garrick, and then holographic Dr. Bashir, not only are they married, but apparently Garrick likes arguing. That kind of fits for him, and that he knows combat and all that, which shows that he's not just a simple doctor, just like he clearly wasn't a simple tailor. And should also mention that Curzon Dax dies, but Tapar decides to use a mind meld to take his Katra back to his universe. Hopefully they'll be able to do that. So the entire Curzon and all of Dax's memories are now being held inside Tapar. Thankfully she's a Vulcan, but I do kind of feel like that was subtly paralleling basically Dr. McCoy getting Spock's Katra in the Wrath of Khan. And it's also interesting watching their bickering dynamic, but they were really friends. He just liked to bicker. I decided to mention that stuff because there's a lot of other stuff there as well, but I just had to mention this. So now that's where I'm truly going to end. Comment sections down below for any thoughts you may have. Star Trek Lower Decks has finally reached its conclusion. This is going to be my review of the 10th and final episode of the 5th and final season of Star Trek Lower Decks. It is entitled The New Next Generation. Whew! Can I just address that title? When I first clicked on this episode, I did not see the new part, so I just thought they called it The Next Generation. I thought, great, that's going to be complicated, because when you go and search Star Trek Lower Decks The Next Generation, you'll get Star Trek The Next Generation Lower Decks. They thankfully put new in there, but, it's a bit of a mouthful, but obviously they're riffing off of The Next Generation, and there's some sequel bait in this show. 2 sequel baits in this episode, actually, but let's begin with. So the episode opens with a recap of the seasons of events, with the rifts, with the Klingons, Malo and his brother. I forget his brother's name, and I don't even remember if Malo is which one Malo is. Regardless, we got a recap on them. We get a recap with everything that William Boimler got up to in the previous episode. We get all that, so it then comes in with Boimler getting that message and him panicking. There's also a scene where a bunch of Klingon ships, basically, which Malo, or was it Malo's brother, one of them, I gotta get them straight, killed her brothers because they attacked him. Anyhow, she's wanting revenge on him, too. But also, she's there when the rift arrives in this reality, I guess. And one of the ships turns into the Klingons from Discovery, which I thought was neat. It's suddenly implying that Discovery is taking place in an alternative reality, which, I do kind of support, because I feel like tone-wise and a bunch of stuff, it doesn't fit with the rest of Star Trek as we know it. But I haven't even watched it, so who am I to say? But anyhow, that's all the setup. And then, of course, when we're panicking, Mariner at least calms him down, and they go to Captain Freeman and Ransom and tell them, and she believes him, which takes them both by surprise, and then she goes to contact Starfleet Command. And because apparently the Enterprise, I love that, because the Enterprise is always a ship that seems to be going into these life and death scenarios that's going to make or break the entire universe, or galaxy, or whatnot, is too far away. Now, they are on the way, but basically you guys get to do it. The Enterprise is coming, but we may not have much time, so you guys get to do it. Not our choice, but you're the closest. But that brings up something. Oftentimes in Star Trek The Next Generation, especially, the Enterprise is described as the closest ship to wherever the Cerritos phenomena is, so they're always set. But here I kind of like how you guys wouldn't be our first choice. We do want the Enterprise, because, they do this all the time, but they're too far away. You guys are much closer, so you guys get to handle it. I really loved how they did that and address how the Californian classes are still kind of looked down by Starfleet, even though, the husband of the captain of this very ship is in Starfleet Command. But anyhow, so they start modifying their shields to help prevent, the ships from changing from all the quantum energies or whatnot, whatever technobabble they use. That's not important. Essentially, they get a technobabble solution, but it's not perfect. The hull is causing problems. Uh-oh, that's not good. And then, of course, let's not forget the Klingons show up, and that adds a wrinkle that they don't have time to deal with right now. A fake message from Admiral Freeman by the Klingon captain, who's trying to get the other Klingons turned over to her so she can get her revenge. Why not? The one Klingon says, hey, come here, we'll solve it right now. That would have been the way to go, but, it was a pretty pressing situation, and I'm sure Boimler probably would have thought of that if, he wasn't panicking over the universe being potentially destroyed with quantum alternate reality energies. But eventually they do get to the rift, and the ship does change every time it hits. Thankfully, that's not affecting the crew, because the shielding is protecting them, but because of the imperfections in the shielding, the ship is seeing change. So, first it changes to a one-cell ship, and Tendi's geeking out over how that would actually work, and Freeman's like, not now, we don't have time. And then a bunch of times, including to a Terran Empire version of the Cerritos. Which, Shaxs, yes, we have weapons! And then, they're not working! I just love that scene there. Should I mention during all of this too the Klingons are not having fun, while the big Klingon ship does have the shielding, and probably had some of the same faults. The other ships not as much, but of course those ships aren't changing as much because they called them out, how Klingons barely changed their design, so yeah, the ships are not going to be changing too much. And apparently that's also true in alternative realities, even though we did see that Discovery call out in the prologue of the episode. But one of the Klingon ships gets turned into an old Klingon sailing barge. Yeah, that's not good for that crew. And then what's amazing, they get to a point where they're pretty much dead in the water and the Klingon captain's closing in. And so what do? Well, remember back a couple episodes ago with the episodes of Gods and Angles and the character Ollie? Well, they use her electrical powers to basically disable the Klingon ship's shields, and that allows, well, the ship doesn't change, but they change into minus proto-Klingons, as, the Klingons aboard the Cerritos describe, and yeah, the ship gets destroyed that way. But eventually, the Boimler has an insight, because throughout this episode, he was having trouble getting his implant to connect with Cerritos. No, that normally wasn't a trouble, but he figures it out during all where the ship keeps on changing. I mean, it changes from everything. They get a sovereign class, which Freeman's like, guess this will have to do. I just love that. He's like, oh great, a sovereign class. It's an upgrade in some regards, but sovereign, oh boof. I really wish we cut to them all complaining about that. I really wish, because they probably did. I think there was a Miranda, there was a bunch of different designs. The Galaxy class, I can't even remember them all. Eventually they returned back to the Cerritos. At first I saw Boimler, because when they returned back to the Cerritos, he got excited, happy. So I saw maybe it was an earlier state of the Cerritos that was more compatible with his implant. But I think all the changes made him, gave him time to think and realize what he needed to do. So he sacrificed his implant to help engineer on the Cerritos itself. So he literally pulled it off and said, that's finally as Shaxs did already in season 1. But he was able to basically use the alternative reality quantum energies to channel into the warp core to give the Cerritos more power. And that gives them more power. Granted, it could be very unpredictable now. But that includes the ship literally splitting into 2 different, basically superpositions. We're getting really quantum. This time we're actually talking about true quantum superposition, and that was a long time ago in school for me. I did not study that. That was gen ed stuff. But Tendi and Talin are able to basically, one, it resolves their conflict in this episode where, especially with being really overstressed, not being able to properly work together. Now that they're each split into, they're able to work together and get the Cerritos back together, get the quantum realities back, or quantum superpositions re-merged. Technobabble and real science galore! Anyhow, they'll get to a point and they're finally able to start closing the rift, but it's too late. But the Klingons, so not the one who's the actual, farmer, so the brother of the Klingon we've seen the most. Again, I don't know if that's Molo. I think that one is Molo. I think. We should look this up. Oh well. Anyhow, he basically makes an insight about, sometimes you can't stop a flood, but you can build a dam. So they basically build a dam around this, and it turns into a stable gateway to alternative realities. And of course his brother's like, you actually listened to him? But it was right. They couldn't dissipate or destroy it, so they needed to contain and stabilize it. And they did. And then it cuts, and whew, this is definitely a pretty long epilogue in some regards, but it is so great. Where do I begin? Let's just begin with, we'll end with what's going on with our characters last. Well, not all our characters. So basically, there's a scene, it's amazing. You got I think a Sovereign, you got at least 1 or 2 more, Californias, a couple more ships, a bunch of Starfleet ships. They're obviously making sure it's probably stable and all that. And they're towing a Starbase there to basically, be there at the entrance, probably protect it and all that. And it's Starbase AD, because its old systems won't be affected by the technobabble stuff that this portal is, this wormhole through alternative realities is putting out because of their older systems. That is a nice callback there. And then, of course, it's established that Starfleet's going to be then using Starbase 80 as a stage point to explore these alternative realities. Why does that remind me of DS9 being the stage point to explore the Gamma Quadrant? That's totally intentional. Totally intentional. And there's even a Defiant class ship. Now, I don't know, and it sounds like they're going to be used to explore that ship. So, William Boimler, yeah, he's got a lot going for him now. And a pretty interesting crew, to say the least. Lots of Hurricanes. And also an alternate Mariner, too. I really wanted those two Mariners to meet. It would have been really interesting. Really interesting. But anyhow, so what it seems like is... So while the station commander from Starbase 80 is going to be in charge of Starbase 80, Captain Freeman is accepting a transfer to Starbase 80 to basically be the coordinator for all the exploration missions. She's moving off to Cerritos. She's the only character that does that, I want to say. But it's nice that they, at the end of the show, they're having one character move off. And yeah, it makes sense. She, advancing her career, and her crew's in good hands. And then also, too, what helps is that Admiral Freeman is also being assigned, though, probably to be the admiral in charge of it all. So that's nice. So she literally said part of the reason why she accepted that is because he's going to be there, which makes sense. Having a long-distance relationship in Starfleet is probably kind of hard. This will probably hopefully help the relationship. Granted, Admiral Freeman, he is not ready for what Starbase AD is going to throw at him. The decontamination gel alone is like, is that serious? Yeah. So, we're going to see how that turns out. And then, of course, a bunch of stuff goes on. So we learn that Rutherford totally got rid of his implant, so yeah. And, oh man, where to begin? So, Tendi comments that he looks handsome without it. She probably would have said it anyhow. But as he says, well, like he gets blush and he makes a comment without dopamine suppressors on. And then when Tendi goes to take his temperature, he freaks out. Yeah, and it also doesn't help that, might have been Talin. One of the either Talin, Milner, or Boimler, I don't remember which one, I really should, mentions basically no romantic feelings, and he gets flustered. Yeah, he definitely does. He definitely gets flustered. I mean, I've always shipped Rutherford and Tendi, and this definitely confirms that at least Rutherford has feelings. And Tendi, she's probably much better control for emotions, especially because she, has practice. Rutherford, well, he gets everything flooding into him at once now, and probably remembering past stuff now too. So yeah, that probably doesn't help him processing his emotions right now. So definitely there's that. And of course, they're surprised that Mariner is behaving so professionally about her mother being transferred, and basically her very mature speech she gives. I won't quote it because there's a lot there. And then when they arrive on the bridge, guess what Mariner says? She says, like, yeah, I might have burned my mattress. So it does, and she mentioned something else too, and so she said, yeah, it's probably all out of my system now. I just thought that was hilarious, and apparently the mattress is still burning as they speak. I should also mention during the climax of this, Boimler actually destroys the pad from the alternative reality, mainly because he saw it was starting to get in the way of his friendship with Mariner and with, the Klingons, because the brother thought his brother was being hidden by Mariner. No, it was actually Ransom who did that to give Freeman some possible deniability, because he thought this message from Admiral Freeman was suspicious because it was faked by the Klingon. Whew. Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier. Oh well. And then, of course, lastly, we figured out who's the new captain of Cerritos. It's Ransom. It was obviously going to be Ransom, but the next question is, who's going to be his first officer? So he decides to make both Mariner and Boimler provisional first officer. Then they're not happy about that at all. No siree. Well, one, because they're still only lieutenant and junior grades, and two, because he thinks he'll officially promote one of them at some point. They don't want to have competition, compete against each other at all. And Ransom's like, interpersonal conflict does some good. Well, clearly Ransom would not approve of Gene Roddenberry's vision of Star Trek where interpersonal conflict is gone. He definitely wouldn't approve of that. But it is like, that's also such a Ransom thing to do. No, annoy Meono. I think that's more what he's doing than anything. But it's also true, like, who would he choose? Rank-wise, probably Shaxs would be the next in line for that position. Or, what's that guy's name? The guy who's like who's, I probably does all the actual paperwork for Captain Freeman in Ransom. That guy actually probably would be technically the one who's next in line, but I don't think he's cut out for command. He's administration. So I can understand that. I should also mention too that that Ransom mentions to Shaxs that Freeman told him not to let him detonate the warp core, and he goes, "Oh, unless you deserve it," and then Shaxs is happy. I really just love that. And then they're sent on a mission to investigate some talking glue, slime, some kind of viscous liquidy substance. And goes to Lynn was like, "What kind of viscosity is this?" And Tendi is like, "Do they have anything nice to say?" Which is just so perfect. And they go head off for that, and that's where the show ends. It was a hot first set off, and I thought it was like they really did a good job of wrapping up the show and made it feel like a good ending. Well, if you've watched some of Steve Shive's videos talking about Star Trek and the endings and how he likes natural endings, I agree with him on that. I don't agree with him on everything, but I do agree with him on that the natural endings are good. The Cerritos did this, probably its most crazy stunt of all, and while only one character is moving off, I would still say it's a natural ending because of which character is moving off. Captain Freeman is moving off. That changes everything on the ship. And it's also a good setup if they want you to tell more shows with these characters. Definitely the thing with Starbase 80. Yes, I could be they could do a Deep Space Nine type of show, but that also would allow potential a Star Trek What If show, like what Marvel has done and what I really want Star Wars to do. So that is a possibility they set up, and there will be at least one familiar character involved. Actually, a couple, because the entire William Boimler and his entire crew of Harry Kims and T'Pol and one Meono. Oh, and let's not forget Dr. Garrick and holographic Dr. Bashir. I still can't get over that. Just how they did that, and somehow it works. So they got that set up. That's definitely sequel bait that they could easily do a show with, and I see that as a more likely show than what the other sequel bait is the new missions of Cerritos, which definitely could work, and I would love to see that. It's like I said, it's definitely sequel bait. They even mentioned hopefully this doesn't turn into a 5-year mission, especially when Ransom reveals what he wants his thing to be when they go to warp, which Meono and Boimler are like, please not that, because it is cringe. I think he went with like hit the core or something like that. Just not good. Which would actually work pretty well with the Cerritos now that I'm thinking about it. But really, this, like I said, while there is true sequel baits at the ending, I would love to see either of those premises actually be explored in Star Trek. It still is a satisfying conclusion for the journey our lower deckers were on. They're not lower decks anymore. I said this way back in my video talking about the cancellation, was how season 5 was going to be the last season. And I mentioned they're not lower decks anymore, and they're not. Now, this episode, Ransom tells Meono and Boimler when they said they're lower decks that no, they're in charge of the lower decks, and that's kind of true. And there's also a great thing in that montage too, where now the Cerritos strong and all that, and it was just a great heartfelt scene where we got to see a bit of every character we've seen so far, and a lot of characters had moments. Well, Livik didn't have a moment. Livik, he didn't need a moment. But like nearly every character from the past 5 seasons who have not transferred off or died, we got to see. We got to see people going into the water in cetacean ops without, any crisis situation going on. That's something that the cetacean ops officers have been asking people to do the entire show, and that was finally fulfilled in this episode. Small things like that. There's so much good closure. To talk about all that stuff would be near impossible because there's just way too much of it. But I gotta say, they did a good job ending the show. This might be one of my favorite endings of any Star Trek series to date. Except for maybe DS9. When looking back at all the season endings, Lower Decks took its most inspiration from DS9 and how to end its series, and I do think those are probably the two strongest endings of the show, because not only did it show some characters moving off, but it kind of established, that things are over, things will get back to normal, the new normal that the endings of the show have set up. That, I think, makes a really good ending because it feels natural, but if you do want to tell new stories with these characters, you have that avenue. It won't feel like a total, rehash. Like, it's like the animated series, you can pretty much have that pick up right from the original series ended, no problems. But some of the other shows, for example, Endgame with Voyager, it ends the story, but it does not feel like it sets the characters up if you want to continue. Now, we don't always have to have sequel bait, that's fine, but if you're doing a good natural ending, you'll feel satisfied with the ending, but you'll be fine getting more. And that's why I felt with both Deep Space Nine and with Lower Decks. Both of those shows, I'm satisfied with the ending, but I will not object to get any more. Some of the other shows, not satisfied with Enterprise despite my love of the series. I want more because I want a better ending. Same thing with Voyager. The ending is good, but it feels like it leaves the characters off and doesn't set them up. Feels like they got home and then we're like, what now? What's next? It's not satisfying as an ending. Yes, they get home, but the what next? We need that hint in that, and now that since Admiral Janeway changed the past, it's not the same ending, so we don't have that satisfaction anymore. And then, of course, TNG is actually a pretty satisfying ending because they wrapped up the Q story arc, but at the same time, it does feel like it's lacking because we only got one Q and Picard. Those are the only characters we feel any kind of ending with. But DS9 and Lower Decks, just like I said earlier, and I'll say one more time, the ending satisfies nearly every character's arc. We feel like we know that where they are and we're happy for them, but at the same time we'll be pleased and pleasantly surprised if and when we do see more of them. That is where I'm going to end my review. Stay tuned next week. I hopefully will be putting out my compilation review for all of season 5. So stay tuned for that. It might get delayed because of the holidays though, just to warn you. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the new Next Generation in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.